This is Gemara Eruvin Daf Kof Gimel. Tonight, cheers should be a schos for Shlema of Yudamir ben Yakir, men of Vega, Chaim and Sarsham Simon Rizal, Losar Baskin, Basim, Chaisar, Yischaim Saresna, Yusi Elba Middle, Yodapet Shaleh, Shomas, Aviv, Shafiq, Fushiyachana, Faldav Nitariva, the Niban Chana Rizal, Liwa Rachabas Tobia, Musa, Avram Tzvi, Ben Masha, Esther, Besir Shar Chili Yisrael. We pick it up on the bottom of Kof Beis Min Beis. We are literally closing in over here. The end is in sight. Let's pick it up from the Mishnah, Kuf Beis Min Beis in the bottom. Koishrein Nima bin Mikdash, you're allowed to tie a string in the Mikdash. Why are you tying strings? Musical instruments. Musical instruments. The Liam are playing musical instruments. A string snaps, you're allowed to tie that string. Avaloi b'medina, but not outside the Beis HaMikdash. One would assume this is like the previous dinim that we've seen, that in Beis HaMikdash you're allowed to do Isuri Derabanan, because ein geyser in Shvos b'Mikdash. But as we'll see in the Gemara, it's not so simple over here. Over here it might be a different reason, because this might be part of the Hechshirei mitzvah, and that's the reason why the Gemara will explain it's going to be allowed, because you need to have the harps, you need to have the instruments to do the Avodah on the Beis HaMikdash. And if it's the first time, you're not allowed to string the instrument for the first time. They're both forbidden. Says the Gemara, and obviously the reason, not obviously, I shouldn't say that, but the Rashi over here points out that the reason why you can't do it for the first time was because you should have done it before Shabbos. What are you going to do this now? Says the Gemara V'Raminu. So our Mishnah has taught us that you're allowed to tie on the string in the Beis HaMikdash. V'Raminu will ask you a contradiction. Nimas kinar shnifzakov, the harp string rips. Lo yaya kaishra, they would not tie it. Ela inva, they would rather put in a bow. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Our Mishnah says you're allowed to tie it. The other Brisa says you're not allowed to tie it. Answers the Gemara multiple terutzim. Answer number one, lo kasha harabanan harav Eliezer. One is Rabbanan and one is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Who's Rabbi Eliezer? Says the Gemara, le Rabbi Eliezer davar machshirei mitzvah doichen es Shabbos. Kaishra, our Mishnah is Rav Eliezer. Rav Eliezer holds machshirei mitzvah. Not just the mitzvah itself in the Beis HaMikdash is Doich HaShabbos, but the machshirei, the preparation, those auxiliary parts of the mitzvah as well, Doich HaShabbos. Therefore says Rav Eliezer, you're allowed to tie the instrument. It's a preparation for the mitzvah. That will be the second brisa that says, Rabbanan say you cannot be Doich, cannot push off Shabbos. Rather, what are you going to do? Say the Chachamim, rather, you tie it in a bow, because of course we know the conventional understanding is that a bow is not forbidden to tie on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, one second. If it's Rav Eliezer's opinion, then you should even be allowed to do it for the first time. The Mishnah concluded that everyone agrees you can't do it for the first time. Why? If it's Rav Eliezer, he holds machshirei mitzvah doich Shabbos. Should even be allowed the first time. Says the Gemara, lo kasha, it's not a question. Ha Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan. What is Rabbi Yehuda? And what is the opinion of the Rabbanan? So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, which holds that Rabbi Yehuda is a very interesting opinion. Let's see, we've seen this before. Let's see Rabbi Yehuda on the bottom here, and Rashi points out, Rabbi Yehuda holds, Kaisher av malachi aliba deman. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda is the opinion that holds, let's go, drop back. And Rabbi Yehuda is the one that holds that even an aniva, a bow, is included in the malacha. And that's the reason why Rabbi Yehuda is going to be the machmir. Says the Gemara, one second, very nice. Rabbi Yehuda leave it to man. Who is Rabbi Yehuda going according to? Moving along to Kuf Gimel, I'm sorry. Amid Aleph, today's daf, says the Gemara. If he's going according to the opinion of Rav Eliezer, then I feel the same question. According to Rav Eliezer, you let even tie for the first time. The Mishnah clearly stated out that way. Ella, says the Gemara, Ella loikasha, harav Shimon, harabanan. One is the opinion of Rav Shimon. What is the Rabbanan? Who Rav Shimon, who Rabbanan? Says the Gemara, the Tanya. We learned in a Brisa. Ben Levi Shnifskalei Nima. You have a Ben Levi. You have a Levi in the Beis HaMikdash. His harp string rips. Bikinar. Kaishra. You're allowed to tie it on. Tanakama's opinion. Rabbanan's opinion. Rav Shimon Aimer. Ainva. Bo. Shimon Elazar Aimer. It says Rav Shimon Elazar, he was a musician. He says, 1 second, if your harp string rips and you're just going to go and tie a knot in it, it's not going to sound very nice. It's going to mess up the whole sound by having a knot in the middle of your instrument. Says Rav Shimon Elazar, you got to do something better. Says Rav Shimon Elazar, Ella, Mishalshel Milmata, V'koyach Milmala. You got to pull down the string. The string ripped. So you have to pull down the string, and then on the top, you wind it around the top a little more. Or the opposite. But Shimon Elazar says, if you're going to go, and you're going to tie a knot in the middle, it's going to be pointless. So now this teretz of the Gemara is saying that one is Rav Shimon, and one is the who allows only to make a bow, and one is the Tanakama that's going to allow even to tie a knot. That is teretz number 2. Another teretz. I'm sorry. That is, I should say teretz number 2. That's really the third teretz, but the first 2 we destroyed, and this is the first one that stands the test of time. They're both the Rabbanan. According to Rabbanan, seemingly you're not allowed to tie a knot. The Gemara makes a differentiation where the knot is made. A third answer, so they're both the middle of the harp, middle of the string, and the machlekes is whether we make this gezerah. Okay, so multiple answers, exactly 3 different answers how to learn up the contradiction between our Mishnah that says you're allowed to make a knot, excuse me, and the Bryce that says you're only allowed to make a bow. Says the Mishnah, you're allowed to cut off a wart in the base of Mikdash. Now, everyone's wondering, why are you cutting off warts in the base of Mikdash? Medina, but not outside the base of Mikdash. And if you're using a utensil, it is forbidden both in the base of Mikdash and outside. So we're scrolling down for a moment to see Rashi at the end of the narrow lines. Rashi says, mum, what's a yabelas? A wart. It's a mum. The carbon tamid we know. The carbon tamid we know is Deicha Shabbos. Problem is, you're not allowed to bring the carbon because there's a mum on it, because there's a wart on it. So you're allowed to cut off that wart on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah, you're allowed to cut it off biyad. Chayt Chabelas biyad, Kamar Rashi explains. But Bekli, it's going to be forbidden, both inside and outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Let's see the Gemara. V'raminu on the last narrow line, Har Kivu v'Har Vasai v'Chutz L'Tchum. Says the Gemara, this Mishnah seemingly contradicts another Mishnah. Now what does the Mishnah say? Har Kivai. Where's this Mishnah? Mishnah Psachim, Daf Samach Beis. 3 months. I should say 2 months about. 2 months, we'll be there. Mirza Hashem. What does the Mishnah there say? Har Kivai. We all know you bring Karban Pesach and Erev Pesach, but you even allowed to bring it on Shabbos. But says the Gemara, says the Mishnah over there, I should say, that Har Kivai carrying the Karban Pesach v'avasai and bringing the Karban Pesach michotz l'tzcham v'chatichas yabal toy and cutting off a mum for the Karban Pesach ein doichin. You're allowed to bring the carbon. You're allowed to shecht it. But you're not allowed to carry, you're not allowed to do all the auxiliary malachais. So ask the Gemara, I don't understand. Our Mishnah just taught us you're allowed to cut off the wart in the Beis HaMikdash. And seemingly the Mishnah Psachim says you are not. Answers the Gemara, Rav Eliezer Aimer, Doichin, Rav Eliezer, Rav Yosi, Ben Chanina. I'm sorry, that was the end of the Brisa. The Brisa says, Ein Doichin, meaning you're not allowed to cut off the wart. And Rav Eliezer Aimer, Doichin. So the question, one more time. So the question is from the Tanakama. The stam opinion in this brisa is that seemingly the Chachamim, like in our Mishnah, and in our Mishnah said you cut off the wart, and over there it says you do not cut off the wart. Says the Gemara of Lezer, Rav Yosi ben Chanina Chad Amar Hava Habalacha. They're both the brisa and the Mishnah talk about a moist wart, a wart that has life to it. So how do we answer the contradiction? V'lo kasha, kan biyad, kan bikli. Simple differentiation. A yad, we all know this is the Rabbanan, that's going to be allowed in the Beis HaMikdash. Bikliya, utensils, and it's a Daraisa. What malacha? Probably we're discussing malacha of Geizi, says Rashi, shearing, cutting something off from its life source. And therefore, that's going to be the reason why the Bryce is more machmir. Both cases are talking about that you cut off with your hand, so it's at most an Isser Darabanan. How do we answer up the stira? Why in our Mishnah it says it's allowed, and the Mishnah Psachim says it's not allowed? One is talking about where it's a moist wart. One is talking about biyavisha, where it's a dry wart and therefore there's no life to it, therefore you can cut it off. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Uleman damar haviyad. Uleman damar that says haviyad habikli. My time aloyamar habilech habiyabisha. As the Gemara often does. The Gemara now says 1 second. One man damar says the difference between hand and utensil. The other man damar says the difference between moist and dry. So why does one hold up the other? So he's going to respond to you. Yevesha when it's dry. Feel a bit clean on Nishar. He goes extreme. If it's dry, a dry wart is nothing. Can even cut it off with a kli. Shema my taima, says the Gemara. Afruche efrech. Because what happens when you cut off this dry wart? It just falls apart on you. You're not actually doing anything. And therefore that man damar is going to hold. You're allowed to cut it off. Even with a utensil, which generally is an issa daraisa to cut off the utensil. But if it's dry, it's allowed. That's one way of learning. Now we flip the coin. According to the other mandar that says one is dry, one is moist. My table of what is the other mandar? You want to use a utensil, hatanan, but we learned in the Mishnah. Our Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? That if you're using a utensil, they're both forbidden. So how can you suggest that over there you can use a utensil? What does other mandar do with this? The only reason why we brought it is to bring out the machloikas, Rav Eliezer and the Rabbanan. The Rav Eliezer is mekel to remove the wart even with the instrument. What does the other mandamar hold? Similar, just like by Karban Pesach. We did not allow you to bring the animal from outside the chum. Carry the animal, that is similar. Kotani, Dumya, the Arkiva Vavese B'chotzot Ketani, Derabanan. It's coming to teach you just like all those cases which are only Isurei Derabanan. I mean, we know that Chum is a Shaila Derabanan Deraisa, but the Gemara here is taking on it Derabanan. Therefore, it's bringing down the case of the word as well. Says the Gemara Vedach, Harkiva, Deloi Kiram Nasa. In the case of Harkiva, the Brisa, the beginning of that Brisa Psachim, that says that you're not allowed to carry the animal. That is showing you not like the opinion of Rav Nasan, the Amar Chai Noisias Atzmai, opinion that we've seen many times. Tremendous halachic ramifications that we know, because that living beings are considered to be carrying themselves, and therefore, Havasai Mechutz L'Tchum, if you bring it from outside the Tchum, Kirav Kiva the Amar, Tchumin De'araisa. But he's saying we go with Rabbi Kiva that holds Tchumin's De'araisa. Therefore, even though Chai Noisi is Atzmai, but it's a question of a De'araisa, that's why we're going to have to be Machmir. And that is the end of the Gemara going back and forth between the two different answers, whether you're going to differentiate between hand and utensil, whether you're going to differentiate between moist and dry, figuring out why one does not hold like the other. So, Master Rabbi Yosef Amar Rav Eliezer, Kav L'chaimer. I'll ask you, Hakal V'chaimer, Uma Shchita Shimisha Malacha. What Shchita? Shechting the animal is real Malacha. And yet, Doiches HaShabbos, Elu, Shemisham Shvos, Eno Dim Shitas Shabbos. Says, I don't understand. When it comes to the Karban Pesach, why aren't all these side issues only D'Rabbanan issues? Doicha and Poshavei Shabbos. Elo Amar Rav Yosef, a new answer, had to answer up the two braces. Hava Biyat. They're both talking about using your hand, so potentially only it's D'Rabbanan. Ushvas b'mikdash. B'mikdash itiru shvas. And we know this many times that we've seen already. Beis HaMikdash, we're more mekel on the shvas. The shvas b'mikdash. B'mikdash itiru. Shvas b'mikdash. Shvas d'mikdash b'metina. Loi hitiru. That we're only shvas d'mikdash b'metina loi hitiru. We're all not mekel outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Gemara, Yosef Abaye story. So Rav Safar asks, how you carry this should sound familiar. You're reading with a scroll on the ledge, on the stoop. You let it pull it back. Ask the Gemara, says the Gemara, I don't understand. Why don't we make Xer like we discussed back there in that Gemara? That you might come. Says the Gemara, Dilma, why are we worried that the whole scroll might fall out of your hand and you can come bring it back? Don't say that's the case. Why? Says the Gemara, the reason is since you're holding on to, you're always holding on to one end of the scroll. Therefore, it's not going to even be an Isser Derabanan. Okay, moving right along. Says the Gemara, Esvei Mishalshin as Pesach Litanor. You'll have to lower the carbon Pesach into the oven. When it gets dark. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Why are you allowed to do that? This is a shvus in the Beis HaMikdash, but we're dealing with it outside of the Beis HaMikdash. That's where you're cooking, roasting the carbon Pesach. Ask the Gemara, I don't understand. You just told me a rule. You just told me that the only time we're allowing the shvusim is in the mikdash itself. But once you're outside, we don't allow it, even though it's preparing for the Beis HaMikdash. So says the Gemara, why are you allowing them to play with this coals, this barbecue? Why are we afraid of Shema Yichata B'cholim? Like we're always afraid it's a Shia, it's a Chazara. You might come to stoke the coals. Says the Gemara, or say it's a Shia primarily. Ishtik. Avaya was quiet, seemingly accepting what happened. Just like Rav Yosef, when he came in front of Rav Yosef, Amar Lei, he said to him, Rav Safra said to me, Amar Lei, my time will like to shiny lei. He said, I don't understand. You sat there quiet, why didn't you answer him? B'nei Chabura's reasoning, that a special rule, that even though normally we are afraid of Shem Yechate, but B'nei Chabura, the people that get together to eat the Karban Pesach, the more zaris, there's more alacrity, the more careful, therefore they're never going to come to play with the fire. Ve'abaye, and says Abaye, how does he answer? Says the Gemara, Kohanim's reasoning. Not just that the B'nei Chabura's reason. No, the Kohanim are zaris. Amrinan, B'nei Chabura's reasoning. Amrinan, Abaye argues the premise. Abaye says it's true. There are times that people are very fast. That's the Kohanim's job, not every random group. Rava comes along and he says, Rav Eliezer, the Tana of our Mishnah is Rav Eliezer. Rav Eliezer holds the preparation of a Mishnah, yes, push off Shabbos. Rav Eliezer, the Kama, the Efshel Shanuye Mishaninon. Rav Eliezer just admitting that if you have a potential way of doing a shinoi, and that's the reason why it says in our Mishnah that you should remove it, preferably by hand, that's just a maila that you're always better to do everything with a shinoi when it is possible. Moving along to Kof Gimel Amid Beis. Says the Gemara, where do we find this precedent? The Tanya that we learned in the Brisa. Koyin Shalsa Bayavelas. We have a Koyin that has a wart on his hands. And of course, what's the issue if the Koyin has a wart on his hands? Chavirai Chaytzchay Vishina of his friend could bite off the wart. Why? If the Koyin has a wart in his hand, that's a mum. He can't do the Avaida with the mum on his hands. I shouldn't say it's a mum. I should not say it's a mum. Rather, it is a mum. I was correct the first time. It is a mum. Again, one more time. And therefore, he has to get rid of this mum before he serves the Beis HaMikdash. So his friend bites off the mum. Sounds quite appetizing. Says the Gemara, B'shinayin, B'keilav Lai. What do we see? You only can bite it off with your teeth, not using a utensil. Chaveirayin, Iulai. Only his friend could do it. He cannot do it himself. So Mani, who is saying this din? Who is saying that the only time to get rid of the wart of the Kohen's hand, so if your friend bite it off? If it's a bin of the Rabbanan, Ubemikdash, Kimadam Rabbanan, Ba'alma Misham Shvas, Hacha Ma'elihu, Mali Chaverai. If they hold in general to remove this item instead of the Rabbanan, so what's the difference if you bite it off or someone else bites it off? Elalav, what are you going to tell me? Rabbi Eliezer, Ta'amar, Ba'alma Chayiv Chatos. That generally it's going to be an Issa D'Oraisa to remove the wart. But over here, Avagad the Machshirei Mitzvah, Doichen es Shabbos. Over here, you're going to push off Shabbos, Kama the Efshel Shanuye Mishaninan. But as much as you're going to try to be Mishaneh, much as you're going to try to change, you're going to change. So now we're seeing clearly in this brisa a proof that which Rava taught us a moment ago, that we see the concept at any time there's the potential to do a shinoi. You're supposed to do a shinoi. So answers the Gemara, Loi, it's not true. Lo'ilam Rabbanan, the brisa is going according to the opinion of Rabbanan. We also be crazy hachanami. And if the mom is on the Kohen's stomach, then it's true the kohen would only be allowed to move it himself, and he would not let someone else remove it. What's the case? If he had a bite, he had the wart on his back, or on his elbows. He can't take it off. We all know the old joke, you try to kiss your elbow, doesn't work. Certainly you can't bite the wart off your elbow. Says the Gemara, that is the reason why, a technical reason, why he's getting his friend to bite it off. Says the Gemara, V'ira Rabbanan, if it's the opinion of the Rabbanan, Nashkale, Niale, Biyad, V'tivshit. I don't understand, says the Gemara. According to the Rabbanan, you can just get rid of it with your hand. Rav Eliezer, Nashkale, Niale, Biyad, V'tivshit, Nashkale, Niale, Biyad. Says the Gemara, you know we see from here, V'tivshit, Rav Eliezer, and let's answer up the question of Rav Eliezer. Ta'amar Rav Eliezer, Machlokes Biyad, Avol B'klita V'Kol Chayiv. Says the Gemara, so we should see from there that the din is that the machlekes Rav Eliezer and Chachamim is only with regard to when you're using your hand, but when it's a klinat, says the Gemara, 1 second, according to that which you just said, according to Rav Eliezer, he's even allowed to take it out with his hand. Says the Gemara, no, you just went too far. Hi, Mai. I knew the Gazer Yad, Atu Kli. Why does he just take it off with his hand? Why are you making such a big deal? And that is the end of this piece of Gemara, where the Gemara is discussing again how you remove the wart which disqualifies the Levi, the Kohen, primarily in serving in the Beis HaMikdash, whether you have to do it biyad, whether you have to do it bikli. Just to mention one slightly related halacha, isn't it a case where a woman forgets to cut off a nail and she has to go to the mikvah on a Friday night? How does she get that nail off? Very large discussion, similar to here, to remove the nail. Maybe it's an Issa D'Oraisa. How could you even get a guy to do an Issa D'Oraisa? So over there, it seems that the Psak halacha really is, she get a guy to bite off the nail. Why? Because then it's going to be a guy doing an Isser D'Rabbanan, biting, like we're seeing here. It's a shini to bite the nail. However, we all know that practically to find a guy who's going to bite off your nail, certainly not simple, and therefore generally will have to be makel to just let the guy cut it off with a kli, but that is very similar to what you saw in Eruvin Gemara. Says the Gemara, one more Mishnah for today. Koyin shalaka betzvai. We have a koyin that has a boo-boo, he has a wound, a cut on his finger. Koyirich aleh gemi v'mikdash. He's allowed to tie it in a gemi or reed in the Beis HaMikdash, and then he can serve. Avaloi b'Medina, but not outside the Beis HaMikdash. And if the point of this gemi, of this reed tied around his finger, is to be moitzidam, is to tie tight, then it's going to be forbidden, because of course it's going to become a chatzitza. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda read Rabbi Chia, Lo yishanu elo gemi. The whole discussion in the Mishnah is only by a gemi about this reed grass. However, and that's when the kohen is allowed to wrap his finger. Haval tziltzil katan, but if it's going to be a small belt, then avayiter begadim. It's like as if the kohen is wearing an extra beged. We know the kohen and 5 begadim, 8 begadim. They can't just wear an extra pair of clothing. So it says the Gemara, if they're using a tziltzil katan, which is, I guess, more of a primitive bandage of sorts to wrap their finger, that is a din of a beged. It's like wearing an extra piece of clothing, and the kohanim are not allowed to do that. For Rav Yechanan Amar, Rav Yechanan argues. And he says, Lo yamru yiter begadim ela b'makim begadim. Rechel says, no way. Wearing a band-aid? That's not a beged. Wearing an extra shirt, an extra tie, an extra jacket. That's wearing an extra, not just a simple bandage. Says the Gemara, 1 second. V'tepik lei. 1 second. Rechel amar lo yamru yiter begadim ela b'makim begadim. Ava shloi b'makim begadim loi. Ave yiter begadim. Excuse me. Then it's not going to be considered an extra beged. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Why do we say that if he has this thing wrapped around his finger and he's going to hold, for example, like I'm holding my cup, then the item wrapped around his fingers and a chatzitza between his hand and the utensil? We know the halacha is kohanim are not allowed to have any chatzitza between themselves and that which they're serving in the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Gemara, so why don't we say that's the reason why it's an issue? Answers the Gemara a bit small. The issue is on his left hand, and of course he doesn't do the avodah with his left hand, and that is the reason why it's not an issue. Another answer, biyamin mishlei makam avodah. It's on his right hand, but not on a part that's touching something, maybe in the back of his hand or something like that, and therefore it's not an issue of chatzitza. Upliga the Rava, and this this says the Gemara that this is in our the Rav Yochanan we just said a moment ago is arguing on Rava. Tamar Rava, Amar Rav Chisda. B'makim begadim afilu nima achas chaysetzes. Says Rava the name of Rav Chisda that when you have this bandage or this reed on a part of your body in which b'makim begadim, it's where the kohen wears a baguette. Then afilu nima achas chaysetzes, even the smallest strand is a chatzitza. Then it has to be 3 by 3, the size of a minimum garment. Less than 3 by 3 will not be chaytzes. This is Rava arguing Rav Yochanan that we don't automatically say that shilshal katan has a din of a small garment. Rather, it depends upon the size. Says the Gemara, and we'll finish with this. Ad Rav Yochanan v'adir pligi. Ad Rav Yechia minima pligi. Are they arguing on him? Shiny salsal katan the chashiv, because it is a chashiv item, and therefore it's something that you consider. That's the reason why we're saying that as a din of a baguette, but not everything else will. We'll pick it up from the Lishna Achrina tomorrow.